invite you back into this awareness, this space. Do you feel this beautiful Sunday? Does this feel like we're ushering in the spirit of Christmas consciously together? The spirit of Christmas, not the shopping of Christmas, not the lists of Christmas. I love this. My family, well, they're not going to be live streaming today, let's hope so. They don't know that I'm going to out them. But we did this text stream because my dad made his transition this year, and not wanting my stepmom to be home by herself. We're doing some family gatherings at Christmas, which we never do with this side of the family. And a text went through. I suggested, because I'm not big on having to get presents anytime. Like, I don't like having to do anything. I like doing it because you're inspired, you know what I mean? Like, I like doing it if it's a random time in July, and I'm like, that person would love that. But, like, to have a whole list of Christmas stuff that you've got to get is just, like, insane to me. And then, you know, a lot of times when people don't have the resources, the money, then they're getting you Christmas presents, and it's like, please just spend that on gas or whatever you need to do, but not on me. Like, we don't need stuff, right? Like, who needs more stuff? I mean, presents are great. It's a love language, and it's exciting, and I'm not saying I don't love them. I absolutely actually do love them. But I also don't love our consumerism around them, right? So my family, they sent this text stream to everyone about Christmas, and I said, how about we do that thing where you buy one present for one person, and we just exchange names, you know, and we say an amount, and you just get one present. And the reply came back, we have 5 siblings. The reply came back from, and then everyone has their people, right, their partners. So it came back, and it said, that sounds good to me, or no presents. And it was like, well, that's, you know, no presents unless for the kids. Everyone just get presents for the kids. And I was like, that sounds good. And another sister piped in, that sounds great, you know, let's do it. And then I didn't fully realize my stepmom was on the stream, and I just said, is that for her too, or do we get her presents? And my other sister on the side texted me back and said, you know she's on this. And I was like, yeah, I do know now, and it is what it is. And then she pipes up and she says, the stepmom, she said, that's great, so let's do no presents. That's perfect. You know, like, no one has anything to have to think about. Our presence is the present. Our being together, spending time together, our love is the present. So we're like, that's good. And this is the outing. So if anyone's watching, turn off your screen now. But they're not. So then I start getting texts on the side stream with just the original 3. I call it part 1 of the family and part 2. So this doesn't include the little brothers, one of which is hosting. And it's like, so I'm just going to get a couple gifts from Santa for the brother and the one that's hosting, and then well, I just picked up another thing for Linda, and so I'm getting this, and then what about this and this, and I was just like, and I'm not responding to anything. And then it's like, do we want to split this, or do we want to, and I'm not responding to anything, and like, I mean, a whole feed of like all these presents we're getting, and I'm like, I know from a couple of friends that I have that when they say don't get a present, that you can tell when you give it to them, they're actually like, that was not the agreement. So, this time of the year is a very spiritual time. It is a very sacred time, if we allow it to be. Can we let ourselves design it according to our hearts, not according to any traditions that we have been born into? Can we really follow that and let it come alive in a way for us that is meaningful? And for some, that may mean presents up the wazoo, right? That there's a time in life for that, and it's an awesome phase. But if Christmas has in any way lost meaning for you as far as how we celebrate it as a culture, I invite us to take it deeper this year, to create ritual around it, to create something sacred around it. In Unity, this is everywhere, this is the beginning of Advent, but in Unity, we have an Advent practice that is about awakening the birth within us, awakening the birth of the divine within us, and getting kind of grounded and rooted in our soul's nature, and using these Sundays of Advent that build upon each other to experience that birth so that we can go through this season consciously. You know, I like to think of the environment because I'm an earthy person, and I like to think of how, you know, the moon growing and then, well, it doesn't really grow and shrink, right? But the moon growing and shrinking. My daughter's going to have some funny ideas about life and science. But the waning and the waxing of the moon, and knowing that, things shift with that, There's something to that, right? Not only do the police stations get more action, but, women's bodies shift with that cycle. The tides shift with that cycle. We're all part of it, right? That's life unfolding. We're not separate from that. So if we look at it like that, there's spiritual energies around times of the year. And there is a reason why we have taken from this ancient tradition a practice of having a spiritual conversation and a spiritual experience through this time of year. Now, we know logistically that Jesus wasn't born at Christmas time. Well, not everyone does, and if that's a new memo, I'm sorry for today. But you can do a little research on that. It probably wasn't around Christmas time, scientifically. But it is a tradition that brings together all of these sacred traditions. It doesn't leave out paganism. It doesn't leave out all of these interesting, unique parts of the human spirit, right, that come together to give us this sacred story so that we can have an experience of birthing a fresh consciousness. And that is amazing. That doesn't need to be discredited by anything. It's an amazing energy, and just like the sun coming up and going down, or us rolling around it, there's something to it if you make a choice to ride it, if you make a choice to dive into it, if you make a choice not to make it about commercialism or this or that or all the pains. It's a time that pain comes up for a lot of people. It's a time we have our culture has been trained to have an idea about this time. And that idea doesn't feel good to everyone, right? Sometimes it stings because it is a time where you have this idea that family should be together and family should look like this, or this is how my life should be, or this is what sweetness means. And then we can trick ourselves and do all these things of saying, and it's not like that, it's not like that, it's not like that. And you know what? It's not like that for just about everyone, so why not just throw out that idea and bring in one that nourishes us? Bring in one that's based in spiritual practice and truth. And that's what we try to do and we strive to do in Unity. Unity's co-founder, Charles Fillmore, talked about unity in Advent, and in 1923, on the radio broadcast called Christ's Mind, the Second Coming of Christ, he said this: Christ is an idea in divine mind. And he highlighted the universality of Christ, the divine essence that dwells in every human being. This is in your Unity Advent booklet. It says, Christmas represents the divine child born in each of us and the divine attributes we can develop as we learn to express our God nature in human form. The 4 Sundays of Advent proclaim aspects of this divine nature. They are hope and faith, peace, love, and joy. The 4 Sundays of Advent. Now, I've always kind of laughed at Unity because this is the first time that I've been aware they've said hope and faith, but Unity has been a little indecisive. Unity calls the first Sunday of Advent, this Sunday, hope, but then at some point we started calling it faith. Traditionally it's called hope, and sometimes we call it faith, because hope, you can hear this in Unity. Hope can be said as hope is a desire or a vision not committed to. Ouch. And faith is the perceiving power of mind linked with the ability to shape substance. That's Charles Fillmore's definition. So hope is this God do it to me, right? And faith is this recognition that God can do no more to me than God can do through me. So let me come into unity consciousness with that, right? But this year I saw the coolest thing, so I've always kind of thought that's so funny that we're indecisive, and you can tell different ministers and ministries go with hope and different ones go with faith. And this is the first year that I've seen it, that it says both, hope, faith. It's let's just stop having the disagreement. Let's make hope okay again. Hope's coming back into the fold. We're not going to, throw that baby out with the bathwater. Hope can be a beautiful thing, right? Hope is that like part of you that knows there's something more, there's something different that can emerge here. Like, I haven't lost hope. It's like that little part of me that's going, I'm still here. We can do this. There is light. And it's not quite yet that faith piece, which is like, absolutely, I got it, I know. There's no space. Like someone lifted off into their freedom form, absolutely, they're good, let's just have a party, right? Like, wahoo, go dad, you're having fun now. Hope is like, I know this, and let me feel it, please, right? So this year, it has, the Advent booklet has just a brilliant, I just love this. It calls it the Hope Faith Continuum. The Hope Faith Continuum. This Sunday being about the Hope Faith Continuum. I mean, that feels good to the human condition and the divine self, to me. The Hope Faith Continuum. Can we trust it? That's the walk. And if we can walk this walk of the Hope Faith Continuum and know that we just, we go between it, right? But if we can embrace that, then we can arrive at what next Sunday is, which is peace. And then when we embody peace, the natural emergence is being in a state of love. And when we are in a deepened experience of love, we have spiritual joy. Not the human type that's based on circumstances, situation, based on being able to control our outer environment, but deep, abiding, spiritual joy. That kind of joy in the song, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. That kind of joy. Like, I could be crying, but I'm like, I'm feeling and I'm alive. And that's good. This hurts, but it's also real, and I'm awake to it. This feels good, and it's joyful, and it's peace, and I can feel it. And that is Unity's teaching on Advent. That's Unity's teaching of this Christmas time and what we're able to experience when we look at our divine potential to experience and create. So this Hope Faith Continuum is what we're talking about today. And there is the idea in this experience of the human condition of what happens, right? What happens in life. And we can often feel like life is what happens to us. So there is the what happens. We don't need to invalidate what happens. It's we can judge it as good and bad, but it's what happens. And then there is our perception, right? And our perspective on what happens. There's our perception and our perspective. So we have what happens, and then we have our perception of it or our perspective of it, right? And the rainbow in between those two things is what is. That's where we live. That's the experience. This is real to some degree, but it's not real, as in we all experience the what happens differently, correct? Like there is the what happens, then I am a totally different person in that than you are. I have a totally different experience, right? And then we have our perception and our perspective, right? And so when we bring those two together, we create this kind of like rainbow of life, and in that is where we live. That's the what is, and being present to what is for us. And this is where we tend to live. This is our potential to create. This is the potential, the area and the space that in Unity we call co-creation, that we take accountability for. If you stay over here and just what happened, then you're not a co-creator, right? We're not a co-creator. Life just happens to us. Well, it's actually not even true, because you're still in the bridge, because your perception is really, right, driving everything. But when you recognize your perception is driving a lot, then you begin to be able to lift off from here, from what is, and enter the space of divine creation. So, one could say this is the spirit of giving. This is the season of loving. This is the season of family and togetherness. One could also say this is the season of feeling alone and disappointed. It's a season of knowing how much you have or how much you don't have. You choose it. We get to create it. When we're really stuck in the human condition, it doesn't feel like it. But if we could just entertain the possibility that there is some leeway, that there is some room to create, and take that on in this Advent season, I think that we will experience the truth that there is something collective to this season that will lift us and carry us and transform us through it. Are we willing to take that ride? Are we willing to ride that energy? I loved the line from the song that Danny's mom used to sing that said, "You can't hurry my God. It may not come when you want it, but it's right on time." That's the hope to faith continuum. May not come when you want it, hope. But if we can stand in our principle and our practice and trust that it comes right on time, then we can give life the light touch. Because what can be so difficult about life is feeling disconnected. There is more than enough love and support when we show up for each other and we decide to express our divine potential. I have a friend who has a nephew who just made his transition. He lived on the East Coast with his family, 4 children, younger children, and he was a fire chief. And she went with her relatives out to this memorial. It's her sister's only son. And so he had a health struggle, and that health struggle ended with him lifting off. And this just happened recently, right before the holidays. And we didn't talk about it right away, and we finally spent some time together. And you know those things that are just too intense to even, like, you need time, and you acknowledge that you need time even before anything's spoken. And so there was some just time, and then we finally got together and talked about sharing a few pictures, and then she was like, "Well, I'll wait." And then I said, "No, I'd like to see them if you're ready, if you want to show me." And I couldn't look at the pictures without crying, right? So we just cried. And they were beautiful tears, and they were real, they were intense. But so much of the crying was really about kind of the rainbow. It's like there was the what happened, and then there was the perception and the perspective in it, and then there was this light in between. And it's like the incredible intensity of loss swirling with the beauty of love and the potential of what we can be and how we can show up for each other. Because this dad, this man, this person of community service was a fire captain. Anyone have firemen, fire people in their families? I come from a line of firemen. Now, I don't know if it's because these people have dedicated their lives to, I mean, some of them might just be pyros and doing it to have fun with fire, but they have dedicated their lives to this sacrificial love for each one of us. And not just like a love that would have a light injury. Like, anyone ever burned your finger? Like, that would not be my profession, to go into something being like, I'm willing to go through fire for you. Every day of my life. And my relatives live in that world. They live in that knowing every time I go to work that I am willing to walk through fire for you. And I somehow decided that's going to be my life's choice of how I'm going to be on the planet from day to day. Like, I know we don't sit there every day and contemplate a fireman or a fire person, but like, you guys, right? Are there any firemen, firewomen in the house? No, they're at work right now. Mike was a fireman. and a baby nurse. Her husband he volunteers in our nursery because he's a baby nurse and a fireman. See? And then he doesn't even go to church himself so he can take care of our babies. These people are something else. But I don't know if it's because of that, because the heart that would say something like that and be like, this is how I'm going to serve humanity and my planet and my God. I don't know if it's because they break bread together and that does something in a community, because if you know about the schedule, right, they do those long shifts and overnight. So they're often creating a family where they break bread together. They make meals together. They wake up together. They go to sleep together. That doesn't sound right. They have Thanksgiving together. Like people bring Thanksgiving to the firehouse, right? I don't know if it's that aspect that creates that connection. But somehow it becomes a family, right? It becomes a family, and it births a whole culture within it that is pretty incredible and pretty dedicated to each other, right? And to also the universal family, right? There's a lot of sacrifices made. So at this memorial, they had quite large areas filled, right? And there was quite a lot of to-do on everyone coming together. It was the Raleigh-Durham area. And we're like filling areas with people dressed up in their uniforms to respect and to honor this chief that was so well loved. And going through the pictures, there's a moment where some of them came to kneel before the kids. And I don't know, they maybe offered them something of his, I forget what the exact. That's funny. It's beautiful. My woo-woo is coming out. So there is this family, and there are these kids who their dad is now in the Freedom Forum, and they'll grow up without him. And then there is this community that kneels before them, and in a way that like a firehouse can do, says, we're here for you. We got your back. And that's not an empty promise. Like that mother will never have anything happen in her house that within 10 seconds she can't pick up the phone and have 10 men or women there, right? Ready to do anything. Those kids will never want for anything. They will never be alone. They may feel alone, but they will never be alone. And you can bet that is for the rest of their lives, because that's how the fire department works. And we were just crying about that in this beautiful way. And then my friend, who is one of the most incredible lights on the planet, said, I wish everyone could feel that in community all the time. That's what we're here to create. So it wouldn't matter if you lost your only child. Not that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter as far as your being alone. Like, that thought, if you don't have a child, or if you lost your only child, not only do you deal with the heartbreak of that, but then you think, when I'm older, and we think for each other, when they're older, who's going to be there for them? Who's going to be there? Like, I think that. I tell people all the time, I'll be here for you. I think I'm going to have to run a hospice center or a place. So if you ever know a donor, let me know, and then I'll set up a place and anyone can come. But I think about that with people, like if their relatives move away or whatever, like who's going to be there with them? Everyone deserves, that's what we're here to create. That brings us from hope, which has a little bit of fear in it, into faith, which is like a knowing there is more than enough here. And it doesn't take those family ties, and it doesn't take having a life where nothing bad happened. It doesn't take having $1 million and being able to save up enough money that no matter what, you know life is going to be okay. It takes community, and that's the only thing that's ever going to do it, is the body of Christ in and through each one of us and us as a collective. It takes knowing ourselves as a universal family, like really, really knowing that. So my other experience this last week, I got a call from one of my friends. I think it started with a text, and she's a nurse practitioner up in Wisconsin, and she runs a hospice. She works at a hospice center and also runs another center of elders. And she texted, it was a rough day. And we're not built the same way. She has a lot more serotonin than I do. So I know when she says she has a rough day, something happened. And she said we had a difficult time keeping one of our elders physically comfortable as she was making her transition. And that was really hard on her. So I called her later and we talked a little, and she told me about this beautiful woman, Anne was her name. And she talked about the trouble, and at the end, she did have physical peace as she made her transition. But my girlfriend, who doesn't, like I overfeel everything. She doesn't overfeel everything, let's just say, in a good, positive, healthy way. And she was just feeling so bad that she couldn't have made the whole thing easier and good. And then she revealed that at the end they did get it right. But and I tried to, say a couple things that might feel better, and she was like, I was like, well, anyway, you don't want to hear the details. But it was about breathing, strenuous breathing, And I thought, well, that's better than a lot of other things, That's what my mind tries to do, tries to make other scenarios. And she's like, no, really, it wasn't good. There's no way to metaphysical malpractice me here. Put your stuff back in your pocket. And I was like, you're right, that does sound bad. But she said through her strenuous breathing, Anne was trying to smile at my friend, Amanda. She was trying to smile at her to almost let her know, like, I know you're trying, thanks. Like, just make peace in the moment. And Amanda was still just having a hard time that she and the team didn't do better. And I said, well, she had you. Can you feel that? She had you in her last moment. She got you. There can be a lot of different experiences at care centers. There can be a lot of different experience in our last moments when we lift off. And I just said to her, Anne got you. Through that experience, she had you. And I couldn't imagine wanting any more than that. And I felt happy for Anne that in her last moment, she had Amanda. Like you never know what you're going to get, We try to say, let me set up all my relatives, let me set up all my friends, let me have my money so I can make sure. But you know what? Wherever we are, there's a bed, and it's a bed. You probably don't even care if it has sheets on it or if it smells at the end, but it's a bed. But what really makes a difference is a quickened moment, a divine encounter, and that's free. And we all have the ability to give it in every second. All the people around you, not just the ones you think you're responsible for, all of them, they have you. We just celebrated the life of Hayden Elder, who is one of our Unity longtime members. And he lifted off into his freedom form. And you know the thing that everyone in that sanctuary said? He left them with a feeling. He left them with feeling seen, belonging, loved. He left each moment better than before he was present. And that was the truth about him. I can't say that. I mean, I'd have a list of people that say, you did not leave my moment better. I know my family could say that. I'm sure there's plenty of people that could say that. You might be able to say that. You've left some moments not better than the second you came in the room. Hayden Elder, everyone hands down was like, we decided that he if you didn't know him, he was a Santa. And he, had the beard and he would do Santa. He really was Santa Claus. He really was the spirit of Christmas. That's what Advent and Christmas season is about. We all have that divine potential. So let's break it down into some steps of what's practical. Unity is about practical practice. So what does it take? What can we do knowing that this is where we tend to live? We live in that rainbow between what happens or what it seems like in our perception. This is our what is in between. What can we do? We can remember that inclusivity creates belonging. Show someone they belong. Show them they're chosen. Invite them. We can put someone else's needs above our own. Sacrifice. Sacrifice. Ask someone, how can I better love you? How can I better support you? Is there anything I can do to maybe sacrifice a little bit myself to get over how I do things and maybe make life a little softer for you? The next is be someone's hope or faith in humanity, in God. Be the reason someone believes in God. Not because of what we're preaching or telling them they have to believe, but because they have had a divine encounter and the evidence is there that God is flowing in and through and as that moment, that being, that person, that experience. And what are some practical, reasonable things that we can do to act on those things? Because our fifth principle in unity is act. For inclusivity, what can you invite someone to? For sure you can invite them to the Christmas Eve service. We'll try to have invitations next Sunday so you could do that. But think about the people that might need a little more love this December and put out an invitation to something. For someone else's needs and putting them above our own. We have that prosperity tree out there in the lobby, and that's for just the church needs. It was a creative way that we do to meet our budget, but there are a bunch of things that you could do for Unity Village Chapel. But I invite you to do something funky this year. I would love to see us take the things off the tree, but then put things back on the tree. So there are some folks that are food insecure. There are some folks that are having a hard time having gas money, and we probably know who they are. Some of them may talk about it, some of them may not. If you haven't seen this yet on social media, there are a lot of people posting and reposting, like, if someone's food insecure or someone needs something, come to my Thanksgiving table, or just message me and we won't ever talk about it, but I'll deliver food to your house. So I would like to see us fill that tree with little gas cards, gas gift certificates, like, you know how you can get that at the store, a gas card, or little things for the grocery store. And then just leave them out there for people that might need them or might know someone that need them. Maybe they'd be $5 or $10. Maybe one of them will show up. Maybe the whole tree will be filled with them. But I know people that are in that place. You probably know people that are in that place too. And if you don't, maybe you stick one in your car and you drive by someone on the side of the road anytime this month and you see them and you just hand them a food card, a gas card. But do something practical. Take action. be the reason someone believes in source, in spirit. Not because you preach about it, but because of who you are and how you make them feel. Namaste.